Welcome to the Tim Booker channel, spreading the wisdom of virtue. Wishing you an enjoyable listening experience. Today, the book I'm going to interpret for you is Asking the Right Questions. The focus here is on a specific type of questioning, known as critical thinking. This book aims to assist you in becoming a critical thinker, enabling you to ask better questions, articulate your viewpoints effectively, and gain a deeper understanding of the world. Critical thinking is not a foreign concept to us, especially in this age of information overload, where we encounter a barrage of diverse and often confusing information daily. Various media outlets and self-proclaimed experts continuously push information our way. Faced with this deluge, whom should you trust, and whom should you question? Are their evidence credible? Is there only one conclusion to the questions posed? What are your own views behind these questions, and what are your reasons? Living in an era characterized by information explosion, we all understand the importance of not blindly believing everything we hear or read. Critical thinking, as a tool for navigating complex information, has been advocated for many years. However, not everyone knows what it entails or how to practice it. This book serves as a practical guide, teaching you step by step how to become a critical thinker, pose crucial questions, and shed light on contentious debates. This book has two authors, M. Neil Brown and Stuart M. Keeley. Brown, an economics professor with a substantial publication record, is an authority in the field of critical thinking and a prominent speaker at international critical thinking conferences. He has provided critical thinking training and consulting services to organizations such as IBM's Asia-Pacific Division, LEGO, the American Association of Business Schools, the United States Air Force Research Institute, and dozens of universities. He is, therefore, a highly specialized provider of critical thinking training and consulting services. This book was first published in 1978 and has since seen 12 editions. The version we're discussing today is the latest one. In this edition, there are numerous additions, including insights into how critical thinkers should communicate and write, which we'll also touch upon during our interpretation. Next, I'll break down this book into 3 sections for you. First, we'll explore what critical thinking is and why it's essential to cultivate this skill. In the second section, we'll dive into practical exercises, discussing how to engage in critical thinking. Finally, I'll offer some reminders from the book, highlighting potential pitfalls that can lead you into thinking traps. Alright, let's officially delve into this book. First, let's discuss what critical thinking is. Critical thinking isn't a novel concept, most people have a vague impression of it. However, if I were to ask you to define critical thinking precisely, you might find it a bit challenging. There's also a common misconception about critical thinking, where it's seen as simply doubting and criticizing everything, seizing on any slight error in someone's argument for condemnation. But that's not the case. The book defines critical thinking as systematically evaluating everything we hear and see, then responding. It's like panning for gold amidst a wealth of information, emphasizing thinking, analyzing, and examining information before selectively believing and absorbing it. To better grasp critical thinking, let's first understand what's called sponge thinking. Sponge thinking is when we passively absorb knowledge from the external information presented to us, effortlessly soaking it up like a sponge. Absorbing external knowledge is the starting point for all our learning. However, this thinking style has a fatal flaw: it lacks the evaluation and judgment stage, which is crucial for fostering independent thinking. If we believe everything we read without question, we become mere puppets. In contrast, critical thinking is like gold mining, treating the process of reading and listening as a prospecting endeavor. Others' words are a mixture of gold and stones, and our task is to listen and read with a questioning attitude. Instead of blindly accepting someone's viewpoint, we engage with a mindset ready for debate, continuously sifting through the sand to find the gold, persistently questioning and pondering the answers to the questions. Compared to sponge thinking, critical thinking empowers us with agency, helping us arrive at the most rational answers. A critical thinker isn't someone who seeks arguments for argument's sake, but rather someone who selectively screens, assesses, and judges information with a rational mind, forming their conclusions. The ancient Greek philosopher Socrates was particularly fond of asking questions and often used the Socratic method, or Socratic questioning, when discussing issues with others. Socrates believed that all knowledge arises from doubt, and questioning can prevent dogmatism, helping us find the correct answers. Critical thinking enables us to discern right from wrong, making us clear-headed, tolerant, and humble individuals. So, critical thinking may not sound challenging, but it can be challenging to practice consistently. In our daily lives, whether we're acquiring knowledge, interacting with others, handling work, or enjoying leisure, we're constantly exposed to vast amounts of information. However, our brains have inertia and limitations. Faced with this deluge of information, our brains tend to take shortcuts or fall into certain thinking habits, often deceiving our rationality. In Thinking, Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman divides human thought patterns into System 1 and System 2. System 1 relies on experience and intuition, leading to quick thinking that requires minimal effort and aids rapid decision-making. In contrast, System 2 demands focus and rationality, engaging our brains in deliberate evaluation. While fast thinking is efficient, it can lead to various biases and errors, such as stereotypes. In summary, critical thinking involves systematic thinking, discernment, evaluation, and response to information. Additionally, 2 points about critical thinking are worth emphasizing. First, the foundation of critical thinking isn't principles but rather a wealth of knowledge. Critical thinking, unlike disciplines like mathematics or economics, isn't a direct problem-solving tool, it provides a set of thinking principles. It's akin to grammar, valuable once you've learned it. However, if your vocabulary is limited, it's of little use, you still haven't mastered the language. Second, critical thinking isn't about avoiding mistakes, it's about promptly correcting them when they occur. Critical thinking applies not only to others' words but also to our own thoughts and expressions. As critical thinkers, we don't just apply critical thinking to others' statements, we also apply it to our own speech and writing. Critical thinking is fundamentally an evolution of our cognitive understanding of the world. It's not an exam with a score, what matters is the speed of correction. This applies to others and ourselves. Critical thinking isn't about doubting and criticizing everything but rather about continuous reflection and evolution. So, now that we understand what critical thinking is, let's explore the importance of possessing critical thinking skills. Now, let's have a genuine discussion on how to engage in critical thinking and formulate good questions. When someone presents their opinion on a topic, and you hold a different view, instead of immediately asking questions or countering, consider waiting for a moment. Ludwig Wittgenstein once said, "When two clever people talk, they always say, 'Wait a moment.'" Next, we'll explore what to do during this "wait a moment" phase, how to examine the other person's viewpoint, or how to organize your own. Whether it's spoken or written communication, any coherent argument consists of a thesis, supporting evidence, and a conclusion. Let's break it down and discuss critical thinking in these 3 components, which are also the 3 most crucial elements in the book's critical thinking training. First, let's look at the thesis. The thesis is the issue being discussed in someone's speech. To critique someone's argument, you first need to identify the thesis in their argument to provide a targeted response. Additionally, the book suggests a valuable point: when you need to speak about something, you can turn your statement into a question. When you approach a piece of content as a question, your focus becomes more concentrated, you're thinking clearer, and it's easier to present your thoughts in an organized, understandable manner, making it clear to your audience what problem you're discussing. For instance, if you want to introduce a video game you love, instead of covering its origins, development history, strengths, weaknesses, evaluations, and recommendations, which can overwhelm readers with lengthy discourse, you can rephrase your content as a question, such as, "What makes it an outstanding game?" With this specific question in mind, you can answer it and provide a focused, clear, and understandable discussion. However, note that a good thesis should be a clear and engaging question. It should be simple yet able to pique the curiosity and interest of your audience. Alright, we've covered the thesis, now, let's delve into the most crucial part, the supporting evidence. We all know that evidence comprises reasons and proof. But what we often overlook in arguments is something not explicitly stated in the argument, and that's called an assumption. What does assumption mean? An assumption is the belief that the speaker considers self-evident and, therefore, doesn't explicitly state. It's the link that connects their reasons and conclusions. Let's illustrate this concept with an example. Suppose someone argues that the government should ban the production and sale of cigarettes because smoking harms health. This argument seems fine, and the reasons support the conclusion. However, if you dig deeper and ask, why do these reasons support the conclusion? You might discover an underlying assumption, the belief that the importance of physical health outweighs people's freedom to produce, buy, and smoke cigarettes. This unspoken belief that connects the reasons to the conclusion is what we call an assumption. Assumptions can be categorized into value assumptions and descriptive assumptions. Value assumptions are the values held by the speaker, while descriptive assumptions refer to how the speaker believes the world should be. These two types of assumptions work similarly. Here's why recognizing the hidden value assumptions in someone's argument is important. Have you ever encountered a situation where someone presented a well-reasoned argument that seemed convincing but felt oddly unsettling? That might be because their unspoken value assumptions might not stand up to scrutiny. Recognizing these hidden assumptions allows you to question them and challenge the validity of their argument. For example, in a debate about whether schools should implement metal detectors for student safety, there might be a conflict between individual privacy and collective security, which reflects differing value assumptions. In such debates, both sides often present strong arguments, but the crux of the matter often hinges on differing value assumptions. Most sources of information we encounter, whether from media, public figures, or friends, rarely explicitly mention the value assumptions behind their viewpoints. In many cases, the speakers themselves might not even be aware of them. Recognizing the hidden value assumptions in someone's argument serves to better understand their position and also gain insight into your own beliefs. Why do I hold this assumption? What do I take for granted as self-evident? When we identify the value assumptions behind our or others' arguments, we can engage in more meaningful and insightful discussions. With the thesis and assumptions clarified, we move on to evaluating the strength of the evidence. First, distinguish whether the evidence presented is factual or merely the speaker's opinion. Facts hold more persuasive power than opinions. Second, assess the effectiveness of the evidence. Evidence can come from personal experience, typical cases, eyewitness testimonies, authority or expert opinions, research findings, and more. Personal experience can lead to hasty generalizations, so be cautious. Typical cases are compelling but may not represent the whole picture. Eyewitness testimonies can be unreliable. Expert opinions vary, so ensure they are credible. Research findings should be critically evaluated as well. After assessing evidence, we proceed to the conclusion. The book outlines 4 criteria for a good conclusion. It should be focused, clearly stated, supported by reasons and evidence that are convincing to the majority, directly address the thesis, and be easily comprehensible to the audience. Additionally, it warns against binary thinking in conclusions and encourages the use of shades of gray. Binary thinking presents issues as either black or white, right or wrong. In contrast, gray thinking acknowledges the complexity of the world, offering nuanced answers to complex questions. For instance, using conditional statements like if, then, can lead to more cautious, rich conclusions. In summary, we've discussed how to engage in critical thinking by examining the thesis, assumptions, and conclusion of an argument. Recognizing hidden value assumptions is crucial for understanding and critiquing arguments effectively. Next, I'd like to offer you some subtle reminders regarding potential pitfalls in arguments that can lead to thinking errors. In this section, we'll discuss these pitfalls, including logical fallacies, ambiguous terms, deceptive data, and omitted information. First, let's talk about logical fallacies within arguments, which are often used to distract or deceive. There are various tricks in this category. Here are a few examples. 1. Ad hominem fallacy. This is a common one, where instead of directly addressing your argument, the other person attacks your character, diverting your attention. It's often called an attack on the person rather than the issue. 2. Narrative fallacy. This occurs when someone presents a compelling story that seems to explain an event, leading us to believe it's true. However, we might not have enough information about the event, and our assumption that the story fits the facts can be a narrative fallacy. In addition to ad hominem and narrative fallacies, there are many other tricks, such as appealing to authority, using emotional language to distract, attacking a strawman argument, shifting the focus, circular reasoning, and more. We need to learn to calmly identify these tactics in arguments. Now, the second reminder is to be cautious of ambiguous terms. After listening to others, we must accurately identify the precise meanings of key words in their statements. If you observe closely, you'll notice that many people, even in formal settings, use vague and unclear language, words with multiple meanings, or ambiguity that weakens their arguments. Therefore, when presenting our own arguments and communicating, we must be attentive to defining and explaining any ambiguous key terms in our speech. Both words and thoughts require refinement, and by paying attention to this, your expression will become more precise and powerful. The third reminder is to be cautious of potentially deceptive data. Nowadays, many people tend to idolize data, and when someone presents a seemingly detailed chart or data, we tend to believe that their conclusion is reliable and true. However, data isn't always trustworthy. For example, some data might have a biased or inadequate sample. Some individuals may omit information to serve their purposes. For instance, if I say that the number of companies in a particular business park increased by 75%, that percentage might sound high, but it could be a jump from 4 to 7 companies. Additionally, some people might use inappropriate averages to draw incorrect conclusions. Averages can include the mean, mode, and median, and using the wrong one can lead to misleading results. For instance, reports on average industry salaries might not accurately reflect the actual salary distribution in the industry. So, even when someone presents what appears to be a reliable data sheet, remain vigilant because there could be many pitfalls in the data. The final reminder is to be cautious of omitted information. Much of the information we encounter in life is purposeful, selected, and organized to persuade us. In this information, there may be some crucial details omitted, which can lead us to hasty or mistaken judgments. For example, some product advertisements may not mention negative effects or use vague concepts like faster or leaner instead of specific numbers. As critical thinkers, when faced with information provided by others, we need to be able to identify and inquire about the omitted details, as they may be essential. This applies when organizing our own arguments too. We can list the arguments that support or counter our position, helping us see all the content necessary for an effective and strong argument and better prepare to understand opposing viewpoints and improve our own arguments. Alright, let's do a quick recap here. We've covered the core content of this book, The Art of Critical Thinking, and I hope these 4 reminders will help you avoid some common thinking traps. Firstly, critical thinking is not about doubting everything or criticizing everything you see and hear. It's about evaluating and responding thoughtfully to the information and arguments presented. Secondly, the foundation of critical thinking is not just principles but also a rich knowledge base. Lastly, critical thinking isn't limited to critiquing others' statements, it can also be applied to our own speech and writing. In practical terms, whether you're examining someone else's argument or organizing your own thoughts. 1. Start by identifying the main topic to respond effectively. 2. Find the reasons and conclusions in the argument, uncover the underlying assumptions, and evaluate their validity. 3. Ensure that your conclusions are clear and consider using conditional statements to avoid binary black and white conclusions. In addition to these principles, I've shared 4 reminders. 1. Beware of logical fallacies within arguments. 2. Be cautious of vague or ambiguous language. 3. Watch out for potentially deceptive data. 4. Pay attention to information that may have been omitted or left unsaid. I hope these reminders help you navigate the pitfalls of critical thinking. Finally, what does it mean to be a critical thinker? The book provides an answer. A critical thinker's fundamental values include autonomy, curiosity, intellectual integrity, and respect for good arguments. This statement can serve as a guiding light on your journey to becoming a critical thinker. That concludes today's content. Congratulations on finishing another book. Thank you for your support and attention. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, audiobook channel. Like and share with your family and friends because wisdom is worth spreading, paving the way for a brighter future. Thank you, and goodbye.